Hey YouTubers, how's it going? It's Jacob Klein here. So now we are going to be talking about something that I noticed a lot of people are doing, and I just recently just did. Raptor lining. Now, raptor lining, very new thing that people are doing nowadays. Um, so I looked online. There's a few videos on preparation and stuff like that, and what you can do to kind of make it easier. So I went ahead and was like, all right, well, let's put a video together for raptor lining and stuff like that. So first things first, raptor liner. Raptor liner is a urethane based paint that they use for, essentially it's a bed liner. Now what I recently just did, and I really am really liking and enjoying it, is I put it on the outside of my truck. So I just wanted to show you guys kind of how it's gone, what it looks like, and then along with that, give you some tips and stuff on how to prepare your vehicle if you're thinking about doing this, or kind of need an idea of like the preparation, stuff like that, all that. First things first, hopefully you guys have tuned in this video before you guys have bought any of your stuff yet. If not, no worries. I'm just going to give you guys a couple of ideas, stuff to get, stuff to think about. I really hope to inform you guys as much as I possibly can, because, like I said, it was a very much learning process for me. And hopefully you guys can learn from a few of my mistakes that I did make. But that being said, currently the Raptor liner has been on there for about a week, and so far it has been phenomenal. It's a great product. I'm really happy with it so far. I did did something a little different. I did go with their shoreline beige, I believe it's what they called it. They've got a bunch of different colors: white, black. Just choose your name, choose your pick, and you pretty much can just go to town and go from there. But I'm going to be going through all the different stuff I use. We got a lot of stuff to talk about, so let's get to it. First things first. I'm going to just throw this disclaimer out there. I'm not a professional user of Raptor liner or anything like that. I'm not a salesman or anything like that. I'm just, like I said, I have no affiliation with them. I'm just giving you guys some tips and some stuff that I just found that was easy. So first things first, if you guys can, pick up one of these Raptor Tough and Raptor Liner books. Raptor Liner is made by U-Pull. It's like I said, a great product. But in here is a lot of really good information. They have everything in here. They have the kits, your mixing ratios, all the extra stuff that you can get. We'll get into later. You can get grip 4, acid 8, the gun, all that stuff. They give you your mix ratios, your specifications, all of that here. I'll kind of give you guys a little bit of a view here. Just some really good information though. All stuff that you can use. So first things first, if you can, and usually they send these out with the kits, make sure you get one, because this will give you a lot of information. Well, pretty much what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through each of these steps, and I'm going to give you kind of what they say, and then kind of like what I did and I found out was kind of other ways to do it, but also made it a lot easier. So first things are the clean substrate, remove all loose material and rust, clean and degrease surfaces with wax and grease remover. Yeah. Okay, so before I even started, I basically just washed my entire truck with, I just used a Dawn or Dove soap, and basically washed it as best as I possibly could. All the paint, I was also painting my truck and my shell at the same time, so I painted both of them. So I cleaned everything with that Dove Dawn soap. Now what that does is that's also going to take off all of the wax, all the grease, all that other stuff, and it will get rid of a lot of that, and dirt and anything else. Because me personally, I was sanding my entire truck, so I wasn't too concerned about a lot of that stuff, because I initially was going to be sanding it off. But yes, to make sure I had a clean surface, to work on, I definitely would recommend cleaning it and doing all that. Now, when you start getting into sanding and going through that process, what I did was I cleaned my truck and then I took everything off. The headlights out, I took the tail lights out, I took the rear bumper off. The front bumper I was able to just shoot around and it worked out well. The door handles I did leave in. Gas cap or the gas tank cover I took off that as well. I took my shell off, took all the racks off of it, and I'll get into a reason why I pretty much had to take it all apart later, and I'll give you really good explanations on everything. Now, next is going to be the sand substrate. Sand surface for 120, 180, with 120 to 180 grit sandpaper. Use red scuff pad for difficult to sand areas. Reclean the surface. Raptor can be directly applied over paint surfaces that have been cleaned and sanded. Okay, so, sorry, I need a beer here. For sanding. Sanding, I found the best way to do, like I said, this is just me, but it made it a lot easier, was I used a orbital sander. This is an electric one. It also has a filter in it as well. And I used one of the interface pads. That's these guys right here. Now, interface pad, really important if you have like rounded surfaces and stuff like that. This will kind of move and roll over those surfaces. That way you kind of get a much more of an evener sand. Whereas if you were to just put the pad on directly without putting a interface pad on, you'd have to like kind of shift your whole sander up and around corners and stuff like that. I also use, when I was sanding, I use 100 grit. I use the Makita 100 grit sandpapers, sand discs. Like I said, 5-inch sander. So I probably used on my entire truck and shell, I think I used about 15 of these. Reason being, there was a lot of area to cover, it was a lot of sanding, so I was right about what I was doing. And all of the areas that I couldn't hit with the sander, I went back and hit with one of the red Scotch-Brite pads. So definitely buy a lot of sanding discs. If you use those, you can use the Scotch-Brite pad as well. Just all depends on what you're doing. Alright, so next thing is prime the surface. So right there, before we get into priming and stuff like that, and right after I sanded, I took an air compressor, blew off the whole truck. I didn't blow the truck off in the area that I was going to be painting because I didn't want all of the basically the contaminants and all the crap I just sanded to be in the area. So I blew the truck off outside, and that way it was a nice cleaner surface, especially in those cracks and areas and door jams and stuff like that. Anywhere like dust and your dust particles from when you're sanding can get into you. You got to make sure you really blow those areas out really well. And the areas you can't sand or couldn't sand just because they're just hard to reach, we're going to get to those areas in a sec. So priming. So before you prime, what I went and did is I went ahead and taped off my whole truck. I got 2 different types of tapes. Now, prior to, it's just like normal painting. Preparation when you're painting is everything. If you don't have good prep work, the paint's just going to come off and it's not going to be good. Same thing if it goes for taping. Taping is probably the second most important thing that you can do. Because if you don't tape it right and you don't do it right, then it could potentially end up pulling the liner off if you don't let it sit and cure long enough. And there's certain ways that you can do it to where you're just pulling off the tape and not the liner itself. And I'll kind of give you an idea of what I'm talking about here in a sec. Another thing you can do is, see how I kind of left a gap right here? That's probably one of the better options. Barely see it, but leave a little bit of gap whenever you tape off. That way when you pull off the tape, you don't get that overlap of the tape being underneath the paint. But first off, tapes. So I used two different types of tapes. I have the small green tape right here. I believe this is just Scotch green tape. I used this for like windows and hard to reach areas where it was kind of hard to get this thicker blue tape in there. This is another tape I used. This tape worked really good. So typically what I would do is I would start off on your window and go like this. Like, let's say this is your window right here. So lay tape down like this. So let's say that's their window right there, right? Okay. So then what I do is I come back over with my blue tape. And this is just me. I always make sure I do this. Make sure you bring your tape back and overlap your other tape at least halfway. That way, if the tape pops up just a little bit, that you don't get any spray that goes in between the tapes and on into the surface. Okay. And again, I'm not a professional taper, masker, or whatever. This is just the way that I found was the easiest. So. And then look something like that. So you have the green tape right here on the bottom. You have your blue tape right here on top. And then what I would do is I had the brown masking paper. You can get like big rolls of them online or at a local paint shop. I would use either that and put that in this area and then put like another layer of tape over that. So basically I'd have the paper, I'd put the paper down. So I'll use this envelope as an example. So like, let's pretend this is my brown paper. So I would put that over, and then again, do the halfway again. And then lay that over. And then cover that as well. Make sure everything's all nice and pressed down. That way you have a nice clean area right here. And you definitely don't want any gaps where the material can potentially get in and get into your windows or areas that you don't want painted with Raptor liner. So that's the taping. Again, skinnier green tape, really good for like corners and stuff like that. You can maneuver it a little bit easier. Thick tape for your kind of like going over that. Now, take this off. What I did find out was when you're putting this material down and you're painting this Raptor liner, it obviously is very thick. So when you are applying your coats, you want to make sure, because it's an hour to cure between each coat. So you lay a coat down, and it obviously depends on the temperature you're working in. You have to wait an hour, and then you can apply another coat. And then the recommended amount of coats is 2 to 3 light coats. Now, this is just my personal recommendation, but I wasn't able to do it, and I'll explain later why. After your third and final coat, wait that hour and try to take that tape off as quickly as you can. Well, not as quickly as you can, but just try and get it off like right around that 1 hour time when the material starts to harden. Because the problem I had is I ended up having to wait because I ran out of material. I ended up using I think 12 bottles of Raptor liner for my entire truck. I didn't think I was going to use anywhere near close to that much, but I did. So we'll get into the Raptor liner later. Try and take the tape off like an hour after you spray it, and it's starting to starting to dry. Because the problem that I had is because I basically sprayed the liner, and then I had to wait for the other liner to come in, so that liner, the first 2 coats that I had on there, was drying for 2 days before I was able to get the other liner in. So that was already starting to get hardened onto the tape. So as I was pulling the tape off, the liner was starting to come with it. So my personal recommendation, if you can, try and pull the tape off same day, 1 hour probably after you paint your vehicle. I'm guessing this is just like I said, you probably don't want the liner to be drying onto the tape, because the more it does that, the more it's going to bond to the tape and everything else like that. Let's see, next. And you'll find out kind of like what works for you as far as the taping. As far as windows and stuff like that, on my shell, they were probably the trickiest, because the shell, it kind of rolls back, and then like this is your window, so you kind of have like a gap in here that you have to spray into, but you don't want to get it on the back side of the window. So what I end up doing is I end up putting the tape and kind of just leaving just a little bit of an excess that I can just roll back and cover the back side of my window. That way the backsplash, if you will, wouldn't get on the back side of my windows on my shell. So, another little tip. Okay, so coming back to priming surfaces. So your trucks or your vehicle that your Raptor lining is masked off, it's ready to prime. What I did personally was any metal areas that had like exposed metal, I primed and put a primer over. You can use this stuff on bare metal, but I didn't really want to deal with that, because I just didn't want to have the possibility of bare metal underneath the Raptor liner and having like any type of moisture somehow coming in, rusting the metal, and then the metal essentially just sits there, and then underneath, and then the Raptor liner just kind of keeps it right there, and then the rust essentially expanding. That was my biggest worry. So any areas that I were bare metal, I used an edge primer on. The other thing too, I spent probably 2 or 3 days straight sanding. On the 3rd day of sanding, I had a couple areas that were bare metal, and I could tell just faintly that they were starting to rust. So make sure before you prime stuff, if it's like let's say you sand for 2 or 3 days, and like on the 4th day you're going to start priming and using your primer because you already had everything masked off. Make sure you check those areas and there's no bare metal that has rust on it, because pretty much what you're going to do is you're going to be putting paint over that rust, and the rust might stop. I personally didn't want to take that chance, but that's just me. Any areas that you're sanding where it's like paint, and then you have your paint layer, and then you have your metal, and then you have your layer in between. I can't think of what the hell it's called right now. I don't know why. But the biggest thing is to make sure that everything is smooth all the way around that area, because the liner will cover it. The only thing the liner like won't really change is if you have like really big like dents and stuff like that. You're gonna need to take the dents out. This stuff won't like really cover dents and stuff like that. You're gonna have to at least pull some of them out and make it at least a little bit somewhat flat. At least that's what I experienced in mine. I had about a dent that was probably very fine, probably like this big, and I could still see it. So as far as dents and stuff like that go, I would recommend that. So this is kind of what I'm talking about. From right back here, everything looks pretty relatively flat, right? But if you look really close, and this is all fine detail stuff, you kind of see, yeah, there's a little bit of a dent like right here, and then another little dent like right over here. So this is what I mean by you either need to find a way to fill in the dents or pull them out or something like that. You know, just food for thought if you plan on doing this. Let's get back to primers. So my truck, when I first painted it, and this is something I found out the hard way unfortunately, was white. I made the mistake of using a gray primer. Now, the problem I have found out with that is when you spray the bed liner over, the gray was shining or was coming out, and you could see the gray areas where I used the etch primer, and it was just popping out. So I was like, oh, great. So I was able, luckily on the third coat, it covered it mostly. I can still personally, just because I know exactly which areas I use gray primer on, etch primer on, I can still see it very faintly. So just make sure if you're painting a dark vehicle, or sorry, a light vehicle, a light color, make sure you're trying to use the same primer that your vehicle color is. So if you have a gray vehicle, use gray primer. If you have a white vehicle, use white primer. Alright, so this is that same area. Remember the gray primer was like right in here. So as you can see, after the third coat, can't really see the gray primer anymore, you know, but again, this is 3 coats. I can still barely see it just in certain areas. It just barely kind of comes through, but just, yeah, something to keep in mind. You really, though, unless you knew, I know exactly where it is, I can kind of see it, but if you didn't know it was there, you wouldn't be able to see it. So yeah, and they have the Acid 8. I don't have that. That's supposedly for, I believe, bare metal surfaces. I didn't deal with any of that stuff because, like I said, I didn't want to have to deal with rust or anything like that. So I thought, all right, I'll put down a primer and everything will be good. With the after you use the etch primer and of course let it dry, the next thing you're going to come up to is I use this stuff. It's a Prep-All. I got it from our local paint supply store. This stuff was really awesome because basically what it does is it cleans your surface. It cleans all the contaminants, all the dust, everything else that you may have gotten onto your truck while it was sitting overnight, while you had it masked off and you were getting ready to prep it and everything like that to paint. This stuff will take it off. But you need to make sure you use this stuff on the same day that you paint. So you want to use the Prep-All, then paint. With the Prep-All, what they told me at the local paint shop, which thank you guys were amazing. They gave me a lot of great advice on how to apply this stuff. You have, what you're supposed to do is, and what they recommended, was you spray the Prep-All on a rag. You wipe the Prep-All on the surface, making sure it's flat one direction, like to the edge of whatever panel you're on, and then take another dry rag and then wipe the same direction. Now, the reason they say to wipe all in the same direction is because you're wiping all those contaminants and everything all the way off the panel and on the same direction. Because if you went like this, sprayed it on there, and went like that, they were saying in theory that you could spread the contaminants throughout the paint on the truck, and you're not really getting rid of all the contaminants. I would definitely recommend wiping down your entire every single surface with this stuff, because I thought my truck was clean after blowing it off and everything, dusting it and everything like that. I thought it was being no problem, but after using this stuff and wiping the entire truck down, it was filthy. There was still paint residue from me sanding on it and everything like that. So definitely recommend using a prep all. Now, next thing we're going to come to is your adhesion promoter. Now, the adhesion promoter, this stuff right here, this is the U-Pole Grip 4, the stuff that they recommend using on the Raptor liner. You use this on I used it personally on anything that was plastic, so all of my truck bed, can't talk right now. All the logos, all of the fender trims, my plastic grill, I use this on. Any areas that I could not sand or get like a sander in or anything like that, I use this on. Door handles, pretty much anything that's plastic or was hard to get to and I couldn't sand, I use this on. When you're using this stuff, make sure you use a mask. Throughout the whole process, I was using, I think these are NPR masks with the vapor filters on them. So make sure you use one of those, because this stuff is really strong. And I'm sorry, I should have mentioned this earlier. During this time, your vehicle should be in your preparation area. So whatever you recommend, or whatever you have, or wherever you're painting it. I do not recommend painting it outside, because like outside exposed in the open, at least put it like under car protectors with the metal frames and stuff like that. You can make a paint booth out of that. You just go to the hardware store, get some thick plastic, and you can make your own paint booth out of one of those. Reason I wouldn't recommend painting it out in the open is because you need a pretty good amount of time for this stuff to cure. You don't want any contaminants getting in while you're painting, and especially if it's windy. If everything's enclosed, it makes it a lot easier. That way stuff from the outside doesn't get in and mess up your paint job and stuff like that. And it's also easier if it's, like I said, if it's windy, to control your patterns and everything else like that. So if you can, I would definitely recommend painting this in some type of enclosed-ish area. Obviously do it safely, make sure you're wearing mask protection, make sure it's well ventilated with fans and stuff like that, because like I said, this stuff is pretty gnarly. It's got a lot of fumes and a lot of stuff in it. Okay, so now we're going to get into the actual painting. Now, I have the black Raptor liner kit here. I used all my Shoreline beige bottles and threw them away, so I don't have any of those. Now, when you're using a custom color like Shoreline beige, or like some of the other ones that aren't white or black, they come with you have your liner bottle. Then they'll come with a hardener like this, and then it also comes with like I think it's a 3-liter bottle of your tint or whatever like that. That's already mixed and stuff like that. Now the way it works is you're supposed to fill, and make sure you do your research on this. This is the way I did it, and everything so far has come out great. And it shows you right here on the bottle as well. At least not on these ones, because these are this is the white and black bottle. But on the custom bottles, where it's got like the typical colors, and that's the other thing too, is so they have, this is the Raptor Black, and it says on here Raptor Black, and then they have Raptor White, which says on here Raptor White, and then they have I think it's called Raptor Custom Tintable Liner or something like that, and it will say on here, and it actually gives you the ratio. It says normally it's filled up to like right about here, so it says to fill up to like right about right here with the hardener, and then this remaining area is where your tint goes in. For the Raptor Black, all you do is you just put the hardener in here and you start spraying. It's a lot simpler. When you're mixing your hardener in here and you start spraying and everything like that, don't try and take like the residual, because you're going to have leftover. Don't take the residual in here and put it into your fresh new bottle, because these are all pre-measured. So when you put your gun in there, if you add like the remainder of this into that, what's going to end up happening is it's going to end up coming out, and then it's going to overflow, and then it's going to get all over the place. So don't combine them. Let's see here. So next, make sure you mix for at least 2 minutes. I'd actually recommend mixing for probably 3, just to make sure it's really mixed in well. So shoot, this is where we're gonna come to the fun stuff. All right, so your truck's finally prepped. You have it all etched, primered out. So now it's gonna come to the fun part, shooting. So like I was saying before, make sure you get enough paint to paint your whole vehicle. Like I was saying, I painted my truck and my shell. I ended up using 12. Just try and get a good amount of paint. That way you don't have to let it dry, because it's a process. Because if you let this stuff dry and you don't have enough paint, like I said, it takes 2 days. It took me 2 days to get the other paint in. I had to rescuff the entire truck in order to put my last coat on there. So you don't want to go through that process, trust me, because then you run the risk of other stuff getting on there in that 2-day period while you're waiting for the other paint. And like I said, you have to scuff it, and you have to make sure all your taping and everything is good to go. And that's the other thing too, is the taping is going to bind more to your Raptor liner. So just try and get more paint. If you think you're going to need 8 bottles, get 10. And on this sheet, it tells you roughly how much. I think it says like 8 bottles supposedly for like a full-size truck. Get 10 just to make sure you're going to have enough. Next, coming up to, all right, so coming back to the shoot. All right, so this is your gun, the Raptor Liner spray gun. So it comes with your together real quick for you guys. So the way this works is the liner gets obviously sucked up, and there's a reason I explain this. The liner, you screw your bottle into the gun, and then the liner gets sucked up in here, and then air comes in this way and then blows the liner on your vehicle. Great system. The only problem is this is a gravity. I'm just using logic here. I don't know if this is correct or not. It's gravity fed. So this, when this bottle is full and completely filled up, you can tilt it a little bit. But as the bottle starts getting more and more and more empty, your liner is going to be down to like right here. So if you shift the bottle like this, now your liner's here. Now you might not be picking up bed liner. It might just be sucking in residual air that's left in here. So that's why you want to try, if you have to paint like any areas that are like where you have to go up like this or down like that, try and do those areas when this bottle is first filled up. And like when you just have a fresh bottle on there, that way you can get like all those areas. Because once you start getting down here, if you start moving it around like that, you're going to just be blowing air and not going to be blowing bed liner. And then you might potentially run the risk of messing up your paint job. Another thing, when it's coming to the gun, if you want to try and keep this as straight as you can. And another reason too is because they have this hole right here. Where is that? There it is, right here. So I did this a couple times. Thank God. I just basically just used my shirt. I didn't wipe it. You don't want to wipe it. I just kind of dabbed it a little bit. Luckily, when I did it, the liner underneath it was already dry, so I just dabbed it with my shirt, and I was able to take the liner off. Because what happened is I tilted the gun like this. The liner dripped out of the hole because it was a fresh bottle, and then dripped onto the paint. So like I said, what I did is I just dabbed it real quick and I was able to take the liner off. I don't recommend, I mean, you can do that, just make sure you're really careful. Another thing with the gun, make sure you get the regulator. The regulator is really important because you can adjust your pressure, you know, your 40 to 60 using this regulator, and it's a lot easier to control. I use 50 psi. They say if you use 40, the bedliner is going to be a lot more grittier, and then I think if you use 60, it's going to be a lot finer. So I use 50, and you saw my video how it turned out. Actually, and that's the other thing too, is before you even start painting your truck, take a piece of cardboard or something else like that and practice putting coats on that piece of cardboard. Don't practice on your vehicle. Practice on another surface. That way you can get an idea of how the bed liner comes out, what it's supposed to look like, and everything like that. You'll I also recommend, if you can, get a air attachment that's like a flexible one. That way you can kind of move in and around stuff a lot easier, and it's not like a hard line attachment. The other thing is too is it's a lot about gun control too. So when you're painting, let's say my vehicle is like over here, don't keep your hose on the inside facing the vehicle. Keep your hose over here, like on the outside. That way you don't have to run the risk of hitting your hose up against your paint job that's over here. Try and keep it like on the side that like you're not going to be like painting on. That way you, and then that's the other thing too, is it's also really nice if you can to have a second person helping you. You know, you can easily just having another person makes this job so much easier, because you know, while you're in there painting, you can have somebody else mixing the bed liners, letting them know, hey, I need another bottle, and they can start. You just show them how to mix everything, and then they'll give you another bottle, and then you can just keep shooting until you're ready to go, and ready to go again, and you just keep trading off the bottles, and then you just keep going. One other thing, I also recommend, if you can, get 2 of these guns, because the last thing that you want is because I had this happen to me twice, is this gun got clogged, and I couldn't use the gun. I ended up having to run to the store, our local paint store, and thank God they had these, because I had to go get another one. So get 2 of these, because you don't want to be painting, have this gun get clogged, and you can't figure out why it's clogged, and have to go run to the store or order another one from online. So just, they're only 15 bucks. I just recommend getting 2 of them. And that's the other thing too, is if you go and you're going to apply coats to something else, or if you're going to go back to recoats, I'd just buy a new gun. Like I said, they're $14. I tried cleaning like between my coats, because like I said, I waited to I had to wait because I ran out of bed liner, so I had to wait for the other bed liner to come in. I tried cleaning this gun and using it again, and luckily I practiced on a piece of board. It didn't work the same after trying to clean it and stuff like that. It's just better off throwing this thing away and getting another gun. And like I said, if you buy one, you might as well just buy 2, because like I said, they're only $14, and the last thing you want to do is in the middle of your paint job having this thing get clogged up and not spraying right, and then you have to go run to the store to go get another one. So buy 2. Quick fixes on if you have, and like I said, I did have this happen to me the second time. The second time I was able to fix it. It started like not spraying out material, like again, like it was clogged. It just wasn't spraying material at all, and you'll be able to see it too. It won't be like dotty. It'll almost be like, it's like just blowing out like chunks of stuff, and it's really random and spontaneous, and they're kind of like strips almost. What I ended up doing was I pulled the gun apart, sprayed in the, took this off, wiped this off, took this thing off, sprayed in here, sprayed on the inside of the gun, sprayed this out, and then I also took my liner bottle out and then shook it up a bunch more. I'm thinking it might have been this wasn't shooken up enough yet, and there was just like a bunch of just like stuff on the bottom that was causing it to get all clogged up. I'm thinking that was probably the problem, but I'm not sure. Right after I did all of that, it started working again. So, if you start having problems, take it step by step. Check your air compressor. Make sure you have pressure in your air compressor. My air compressor, what was I using? I want to say I was using about 80 to 90 psi in my air compressor, but I was using 50 regulator. So, let's see here. Shoot, attach application gun to bottle, adjust supply to air pressure 40-60 depending on texture desired, at a distance of 18 to 30 inches, apply to prep surface in a sweeping motion to obtain desired texture, pot life approximately 60 minutes. I can tell you right now, one of these bottles did not last me 60 minutes. I think I blew through each one in probably like half an hour, but I was painting like really good and just kind of like getting into it, so I just kept going. So when you're painting like your metal and your surface, so yeah, I'd probably be between at least 18 inches to sometimes 2 feet away, depending on how I was painting the surface. So like I was saying about the pressure, if you're using like the more like towards the 40 pressure, you could probably be a little bit closer. But obviously, if you're using like 60 psi, I'm guessing to be a little bit further away, like the 30 inches. And you'll be able to know. Like a couple times I got like a little bit too close, like using the gun, and you'll kind of see it start to like shine a little bit, and then it will barely like kind of start to run. You don't want that. You don't want the paint running and stuff like that. And it will also start to build up really quick too, because you kind of got like too close. So when it comes to applying the coats, your first 2 coats, try and do like short, like maybe I think I did like maybe like 3 foot like spreads. I'd go like here, then go up here, and then go like that, and then go like that, just so I got really good coverage. On my 3rd coat, what I did was I actually kind of came back like a little bit further away, and I sprayed long strips all in the same direction. So like let's say like right here is the fender of the truck, right? I would spray all the way down the entire length of the fender of the truck, and then start like all the way back here and then go all the way back. I wouldn't go side to side. I do the whole thing and be as far back as I can. That way, I kind of notice when you're further away, it kind of makes the texture like a lot more even. But obviously, you need to try and be like the same distance as far away. So yeah, that's the 3rd coat. Let's see here. 2 or 3 light coats are better than 1 heavy coat. If applying more than 1 coat, allow Raptor liner to flash for 60 minutes between coats. If more than 5 hours between coats, allow it to set overnight, lightly scuff, and apply additional coats. Like I was saying earlier, make sure you get like enough liner to just do all your truck in one day. You don't want to have to go through the process of waiting 2 days later, and then all your paint's dry, then you have to scuff your entire truck or vehicle again, and then paint it all over again. Just try and get like enough material so you can just do it in one day. So let's see, coming back up to the top coating. So Raptor can be overpainted with most modern paint systems. Allow Raptor to dry for 24 hours, scuff with fine scuff pad, clean, apply coat or clear coat if desired. Alright, so 24 hours, yeah, I just basically left my truck in the booth for 24 hours. Nothing about the booth. If you guys can, try and find like a rental booth or something like that, just so you can keep your surfaces all nice and clean while the paint is drying. Because that's the last thing you want to do, is do a really good job painting your vehicle and then have like just stuff come in and get on the paint and just mess it all up. It really does make a difference. Let's see, yeah, nothing really big there. Oh, for the clear coat, I personally didn't do a clear coat. It actually almost looks like there's like some type of clear coat built into the bed liner, because it has like a bit of a shine to it in certain in certain areas. So I'm thinking there's like at least a hint of some type of clear coat built into the bed liner. And the other reason why I didn't want to do a clear coat as well is further down the road, because I'm planning on keeping this on my vehicle for a while. If I want to apply coats over it and do touch ups or whatever, because the stuff is so gritty, I don't think when I scuff it I will get an even scuff on it. Like it won't be like all the same scuff all the way around, just because of how gritty and stuff it is. So I decided not to do a clear coat, but that was just me. Dry times: dry to touch 1 hour, light duty use 2 to 3 days, heavy duty use 7 days. That all seems about pretty standard. Dry to touch, that's pretty much right about an hour. That's what it felt like on my truck. Light duty use 2 to 3 days. Heavy duty, that all seems about right about there. Someone recommended to me to make sure I not get the truck wet for 3 days, because of the way the urethane dries and everything like that. It doesn't like completely. It needs time to dry, so water will obviously cause it not to dry, and then potentially I think I could also picture water, like if water gets on it too early, it could potentially cause runs, potentially too. I don't know, but I didn't want to risk it, so I just decided try not let my truck get wet at all for 3 days. Let's see. Equipment cleanup: clean gun, equipment, and overspray with lacquer, thinner, or acetone before Raptor is fully cured. So, like I was saying before with the guns, these things, like I said, they're 14, 15 bucks or whatever they are. I would just buy a new one. Because like I was saying earlier, I tried using one of these and cleaning it and everything like that, and it didn't work. I tried, and I use acetone too, and needless to say, acetone's some pretty gnarly stuff. Like, you should be definitely wearing a mask and eye protection. You don't want to get it on your skin. So what I personally will be doing is I will just be getting a new gun each time I spray it. Yeah. Besides, if you have kids and stuff like that, the last thing you want is acetone or any of that gnarly stuff in your garage and having them get a hold of it or anything like that. So, yeah, that's it. I will put up some pictures of the truck and kind of more so what it looks like now. It honestly turned out amazing. I'm really, really happy with it. Was quite a bit of work. One quick thing. I'm so sorry. I forgot to mention this when you're applying your coats. Logos, emblems, stuff like that. Obviously, I use like the grip 4 and all that. Spray like your trim and logos and like all your small like little pieces first. And then spray over that. That way, like your larger surface areas. So, like, let's say I have like a door handle here, and then, like, let's say you still left like the trim on. I would spray the door handle first, and then spray the trim first. That way, when you go over the rest of your door, it's all nice and clean. And mirrors, I found out, were probably one of the harder things to get. Along with also spraying in like tight spaces, because the gun, you can't really get too close to areas you're spraying, otherwise it could start running. So on certain areas, like I had one part of my door in my truck one place on my truck where it's the truck bed and then it's the cab, but there's an area like tucked in there in between where I had to get the bed liner in there, and it was a pain in the butt because I couldn't really get good coverage because I had to kind of get closer, but I had to be careful not to um, start causing a drip in between the cab and the fender. And you guys will see, once you guys start spraying, um, like what the material does and everything like that. Um, the other thing is too is that, like I was saying, like when I was spraying in between the cab and the fender, the rear fender, is you would still, even though you're spraying in the center, you're still going to get material here and here. So you have to watch that and be careful you don't cause any dripping. And that's also why it's also important to spray those areas first. Like if you have like any gaps or anything like that, spray those areas for it and then go over that area again. That way you have nice even coverage, if that makes sense. And again, if you guys have any more questions or anything like that, just like I said, send me a message and I'll try and help you out as best as I can. Another common question a lot of people asked too was cost. Everything that went together into the project, painting the shell, painting the truck, I would probably estimate it to be about probably about $800 ish, give or take. The Bedliner kit, I think that's like $350. End up having to buy essentially 3 kits, 12 bottles. Altogether, that was probably about $500, and then probably another 3 in sanding paper and prep stuff and all the adhesion promoters, primers, all that. Days it probably took me about a solid week, I would say. So yeah, it's definitely worth it though. I took it to I did originally, before I was even going to start this process, I actually took my truck to a local bedliner place. I won't say the name for copyright reasons, but they want to charge me $6,000 to do this to my truck. So my thought process was, I'm pretty sure I could figure out how to do it myself. So thus far, I've been really happy with it. And after doing some research too, because it's a urethane bed liner, supposedly when it's unlike some of the other stuff, some of the other bed liners, in theory, when it gets super hot and your metal starts expanding in your truck, so apparently will the bed liner, and it will expand with the metal, and in theory it won't cause, or you shouldn't have the problem with it cracking and stuff like that. And I also believe, I don't know, like I said, I'm not the expert on this stuff, like I've mentioned a few times, but I also believe that's probably why they only recommend you putting 2 to 3 coats on your vehicle. I would at least do 3 coats. Like I said, my vehicle was white and I painted it the shoreline beige. And after 2 coats, I could still just barely see the white coming through. It was definitely hard to see. I probably could have gotten away with it, but I just really want to protect it and make sure everything was really well painted. So I did a full 3 coats on the entire vehicle. So yeah, I definitely, like I said, would recommend doing that. And also too, coming up soon here too, we're also going to be painting a trailer with this bed liner as well. That's why we got the black. So I'm really curious to see how that's going to work. I'm going to probably do I'll probably end up doing a video for that too, because the process for that's going to be a little bit different for a vehicle. Like I was saying, I used etched primer on everything. I didn't leave any bare metal because I didn't want to have to worry about rust. With the trailer, it's going to get used and stuff like that, so we're going to do the process a little bit differently. There's going to be bare metal, and potentially I'm hoping that we can take off all the rust on the trailer. It is a little bit old. We might, some of the areas we might not be able to get it off, but we'll end up seeing what happens. I'll probably make a video for that. That way, for you guys that are using this and probably just doing like bare metal on your vehicle and stuff like that, this will kind of give you an idea of the trailer, kind of how the bedliner adheres to stuff that's just bare metal and stuff like that, and what the process is. So yeah, stay tuned for that. Absolutely. Oh, and I'm sorry, I forgot to mention earlier. The reason I left my grill on when I painted it, and my door handles, and I did leave like a couple of the logos on as well. The logos, because I found out because I have a 2001 F-150, if I take those logos off, there's going to be holes in my truck. And I didn't want to have to deal with that, so I just painted over them. Also, I saw some people online that painted over the logos, and I kind of like the look of it too, so they actually looked really good, and they came out really nice. The other thing with the door handles was I thought about peeling those off and maybe painting them black or something, like doing like a spray paint or something like that. But the other thing is too is I use my truck for off-roading, and before it was really scratched, so I didn't want to run the risk of the truck being in the bed liner and then the handles not being, and then being all screwed up, because they probably would be. And then same thing with the mirrors. That's why I ended up bed lining those as well. The grill, the reason I left that in place was I didn't want to run the risk of when stuff goes back together that it doesn't meet and kind of come together the right way, because the bed liner, once you put 2 or 3 coats on it, it starts to build up and becomes kind of thick. Not really thick, but maybe in certain areas where space might be like pretty tight, it might potentially, I think, build up and start grinding on each other. Another reason also why I didn't end up painting like the inside of my door trim and like my like door jambs and stuff like that was I didn't want the bed liner on this side, and then having my weather stripping for my truck in the middle. For some reason, I'm just thinking that it would, I could be wrong in this, but it would kind of just after time just to start destroying my my weather stripping in my truck. So what I'm going to probably end up having done with that is I'll probably taking that to like Mako or something like that and having them paint the door jambs and all that stuff that I didn't hit with the bed liner. I did hit my tailgate too, though, but that turned out really nice. And the my little compartment that I have in my tailgate, that turned out really nice as well. Yeah, the biggest thing is preparation. I mean, I spent probably probably 4 days prepping and everything like that. One day painting. I was hoping on only spending 1 day painting. I ended up spending 2 days painting because like I was saying, continuously I ran out of paint. So that's it for that. If you guys like the video, please give me some comments, feedback. If you guys have any questions on the Raptor liner, shoot me a message and I'll try and answer as best as I can. If not, I can probably get the information from someone close by that knows the answer to it. In the meantime, you guys have a wonderful day and hope you enjoy the video. Cheers.